the lesson is you gotta have antenna 30 feet out of your head. Okay? Imagine antenna, instruments of perception like whiskers sticking 30 feet out of your head so you can sense the energy of a room almost before you get there. So when your foot opens the door and stands on the floor, you have read the energy. You can sense who's receptive, who needs privacy and solitude, and where you should go in that room. In the big leagues, this is where the best of the best hang out. This is the Jai Suguru method. We train to master our own mind. Hi guys, this is Jai Suguru. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'd like to talk to you about the time when I was 25 and 26 years old and I worked for the championship New York Yankees in MLB. I was the massage therapist and healer for the team for 2 years and traveled full-time with the squad. It was a huge adventure, to say the least. We'll skip the part of the story about how I became the youngest employee in all of MLB during my time in baseball. That's another tale. Today, I will share 6 lessons I learned from the New York Yankees. Now, these lessons are from the point of view of a mature gentleman looking back on his youth. At the time when I was 25, I didn't know I was getting deep eternal teachings that corroborated things my father had shared with me and taught me. I was trying to move through life with great appreciation for my position. I felt lucky to be where I was with a winning team. My subconscious mind was absorbing excellence from being proximal to masters of their craft. I was running on the fumes of militaristic training and discipline learned from my strict upbringing by a military father. Now, a note about my childhood, just to give you a feel for it. During high school, I would wake up early, let's say 5 or 4:30 a.m. I would run 4 miles, feed the horses, cows, goats, chickens, and then bathe and wait for the school bus. I lived in upstate New York, about 2.5 hours outside of New York City in a very rural town. My high school class had 32 students, so that gives you a feel of how country and rural this place was. I also ran a total of 96 miles per week at the peak of cross-country season. So there was a foundation in my mind. There was something that created this subconscious work ethic. I didn't know I had a great work ethic, but it was there. And I had absorbed my father's discipline and focus, which the Yankee players were able to lock into and relate to. So somehow I had matched the resonance of what the team was about, which was bringing your best every single day and winning. So I got lucky. Now, as we sit here in studio and record, I have the World Series ring in my hand to jog my memory, and I have about 8 or 10 old newspapers from the year 2000. I see Joe Torre on the Triple Crown cover. I see Mariano on the job he did closing, the three-peat. I see so many things, and bringing me back to the moment is the idea that when we look over through the longer arc of time, we can extract lessons. We can extract lessons and see how our path is carved by what we absorb as pillars in our mind going forward. So these 6 lessons are really funny in some ways. They're very simplistic, but they're very profound in how they shape the man I became. I was part of the three-peat championship. I'm looking here at the ring, and I can see 3 subway cars on it because we played the Mets and we beat them in 5 years. So it was the first Subway series in 44 years. So it was an amazing thing for a guy who just 10 years ago, from age 25, was in his high school lunchroom as a sophomore trading the baseball cards, the Topps baseball cards of these players that he's working with on a very deep scientific level and helping them to win. So it was a mind job for me to stay rooted and to stay stable. When I was excited, it was like moving through a movie script every single day. I went to work walk through the tunnel to the clubhouse and to enter the stadium was like legendary. The people who had walked through the old Yankee Stadium, I was so familiar with the history of all the great pitchers, of all the great sluggers, of all the championship, of the meaning of pinstripes and excellence, and New York being the city of dreams where you work hard and transform yourself. And I was in the thick of it at such a young age. So these lessons are interesting. I want to share 6 things with you. So the first one is really funny, and it kind of tied into one of the mottos that ruled my spiritual life once I got really deep into yoga, meditation, neurolinguistic programming, shamanism in my 30s and 40s. And it's this acronym that Tino Martinez. Tino is a everyday kind of player, a solid hitter and a great defender, a great teammate, and a guy who kind of keeps to himself and doesn't get into a lot of trouble. He doesn't rouse the media. He's not in any negative PR stories you have to cover up. You know, he's just a solid guy. And one day, in the 2/3 of the way of the season, 2/3 through the season, he goes to me, 4 years at the University of Tampa. And the only thing I remember is KISS. And I was like, KISS? He's like, keep it simple, stupid. And Tino went on to explain to me when it comes to preparation and focus that he kept his life really simple. See ball, hit ball. Wake up early, train, go to bed at a reasonable time. Now, I was catching him on the backstretch of the career, so guys tend to get really into the narrow path, really disciplined, really focused. And when they get into the league in the beginning and it's exciting and women are mailing them their drawers and mailing them roses and candy. And it's very tempting when alcohol, drugs, and sex are offered to you in unlimited proportions, such as with Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry. We see careers melt down because of this overabundance of vice and lesser drives. So these things can distract a guy. And I saw Tino as someone who had trimmed away all of the unessentials and had kept it very simple. Keeping it simple is important in a game like baseball because you have an everyday game here. This is a daily practice. You spend a lot of hours together. So we pass time with one-liners, quips, and we even prank each other. I remember a time Roger Clemens got the cops to come down and tease Joey Lee, one of the clubhouse guys, and ask him where his car was the night before. We saw a car with your plates were in a hit and run, and the prank went on and on and on, and Joey Lee got into such a panic. But we do these things to pass time. So these one-liners that go very deep in the subconscious fly around all day long in baseball. It's America's game, and passing time together with these linguistic tricks are really interesting and fun. So he gave me that acronym, and it really helped me to frame my spiritual journey later because simplicity manifested equals things like what yogis are super, super focused on, like minimalism, trimming away things in your nutrition that don't belong. Having the clothes that you use and not too many extra material possessions. Things like keeping your home uncluttered, bringing peace of mind. Things like having honest, clear relationships based on mutual respect and being in healthy agreement with other people. These things and having a good sense of ethics is where simplicity, as my teacher, the great shaman Don Diego told me, simplicity is purity. And I've found that now that I'm 45, I keep my life as simple as possible. I try to not have too many possessions. I try to keep the house in order. And most importantly, in 2021, with what we are facing as a country in America and as a planet globally, having one's thoughts totally organized is a top priority. So I laughed. It went deep into my mind when Tino Martinez said, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Always refining things back to their essence is super, 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 super useful. I will always remember that lesson from good old Tino. Now, there's something else that I learned, another lesson, which is to come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow, which is to show up again and again and again. And the reason I chose this lesson is because baseball is very different than the NFL. In the NFL regular season, you have 16 games, and the guys are preparing for an all-out war. They're waging war on game night. They're putting everything in to this one big day of the week that has this giant crescendo. Baseball is a little different in the sense that it's a grind. Baseball is 162 games, and a player rarely sees a day off. The only day off I got during the whole season, once it got going for me, was the All-Star game. I chose to not go to the All-Star game, and I chose to rest my hands because I was working as a massage therapist on big, strong, burly bodies. And that was very difficult. A massage therapist will get inflamed and experience joint pain if they work every day, particularly on such big guys. But I always hid my pain. I always hid it and said, yes. I knew that I was young. I knew that I would recover, and I knew I would have a few months off in between the playoffs and the start of the next season. So I knew I could heal during that time. And the notion of coming back tomorrow mirrors life because in baseball, you could lose 5 games in a row and then turn around and win the next 10. These streaks happen during the season. You can have a really rough patch of time in your life if you lose your job and you and your partner are having a difficult time paying the bills. That's a really, really tough stretch of time. And so one has to work through life in a practical way, sort of being detached from the lows and highs and being persistent. So the baseball game, being involved in it, as a fan before I worked for the team, I knew all the statistics, I knew the history, I knew the schedules, I knew what games were being televised, but I really got into the fact of a daily practice and a daily showing up, no matter what, to shrug off the loss of yesterday and refocusing your mind to live in the present moment. That was really interesting. And these guys lived the practice. They were always preparing, always training. Some of them were always watching tape and exchanging ideas about how to improve. It was like, we all make mistakes, we all have regrets, but what was interesting is this idea of learning from the past, learning from negative emotions. This is the way a winner looks at life with a sense of gratitude. So the idea of this daily practice that I saw in baseball, when I came to yoga after baseball, I came to yoga at age 28, and I started to devote myself to it regularly as a daily practice at around age 30, when I knew it would answer some of my deepest questions. I came to yoga to answer the question of life and death. I had lost my brother. My youngest brother was living with me in New York City as roommates, and he was 4 years younger. And he went to the same college, and we had a lot in common, and we really admired each other. And in a flash, he went to the other side. And I always wanted to have the answer of where he went. And I sensed that if I devoted myself to yoga, I could experience the answer to that question. And I knew that the only way to really get the fruits and essence of the yoga practice was if I practiced every single day and sensitize my instrument to become subtle, to tap into the subtle vibration of the deepest layer of our being. And that answer has arrived to me through the power of practice, and I teach daily practice as I saw it from my high school coach in cross country, as I saw it from my father and his discipline with his work, and as I saw it from the New York Yankees. Daily practice is the fire through which we shape ourselves, just like we shape a sword and form a sword in fire. In the flames of our effort, we are always reformed. So I appreciate working in a sport that was a daily practice. Now, the next lesson is a fascinating thing. It's a really funny image. I don't know how this image rose in my mind, but it's very beautiful, and I will frame it in this way. The lesson is, you gotta have antenna 30 feet out of your head. Okay? Imagine antenna, instruments of perception like whiskers, sticking 30 feet out of your head so you can sense the energy of a room almost before you get there. So when your foot opens the door and stands on the floor, you have read the energy. You can sense who's receptive, who needs privacy and solitude, and where you should go in that room. In the big leagues, this is where the best of the best hang out. I have been able to work in the big leagues of baseball, the big leagues of film, and the big leagues of finance. I worked with Martin Scorsese for 15 years as his personal trainer and met scores of celebrities through him. I worked for the heads of finance at Highbridge and Fortress Capital and DB's Wern and all these companies that introduced me to the other big leagues of finance. And in the big leagues, the stakes are high. You don't get to make a lot of mistakes in the big leagues. For example, in baseball, you have to get to A ball, double A ball, triple A ball, and then you get called up to the big leagues. And if you mess up, you go back to the minors and you go back and forth until you get your opportunity to prove yourself by having a good stretch of time in the big leagues. Then you stay on the roster. So by the time a guy is in the big leagues, you have to imagine for each player you see, there are at least 5,000 people that didn't make it. So for my job, I was 25 years old and a massage therapist and healer, an athletic trainer, an assistant trainer for the team. There were easily 5,000 people in America that would give an arm to take my job. So that's how valuable that job is, because it's a job of the light. It's a job where once working for the Yankees is on your resume. In fact, this is funny. I've never used a resume after the Yankees. I used to have a resume up till I was 25 years old, but it never became necessary after that position because it opened so many other doors for me that I was carried forward by personal introductions, and someone had heard about me and they never needed to check out the stats on me. They needed to just check out my vibration. And once you're around that level of excellence, it changes one's vibration. So the antenna being 30 feet out of my head has to do with the idea that we sub-communicate. As humans, I learned later from my NLP teacher, Colby Foreman, that I learned NLP between 28 and 32 years old. I studied hypnosis and NLP for healing and enhancing communication. And what I learned was that words equal only 8 or 10% of our communication. The rest of the communication is your posture, your breathing, the tonality, and your eye contact. So this kind of thing, like when you walk into the clubhouse, if we're on an 8-game losing streak, you don't go to Joe Torre's office unless he calls you that day. You don't go there and ask him a medium level question about your curiosity. It's not a friendly time to go in his sphere. You allow Joe to strategize a way to get the team out of the slump. And you might notice that there's a certain type of discussion going on in the lounge. Maybe you're welcome there if you read the energy because it's a lighter energy. Guys are joking, they're grabbing lunch, they're watching a basketball game, they're just easing their way into the day. You can notice to the upper left quadrant of the clubhouse, the training staff is reviewing how to get Bernie Williams off the 15-day disabled list. Now, you have valuable information for the team, so you walk over because I had worked on Bernie's injury the day before, and I would give my read on where he is in the healing process, and the squad with Stuart Hirschon, the team physician, and the head trainer, Gene Monahan, and the assistant trainer, Steve Donahue, would make a decision about whether Bernie needed to stay in rest a little longer or whether he was able to take an at-bat or two that day. So you notice where you belong, where you don't belong. You notice which players are in a slump and need to let them come to you. You don't go over and talk to them. So a lot of this is about knowing your place at all times for navigating sharky waters. In the big leagues, you can get fired on the spot, and I've seen it happen on any day of the year. Any day of the year, you can lose your job because if you're not paying attention to the smallest of details, particularly how your energy is affecting others and your surroundings, you can get in trouble. You have to ask the question, how will my energy merge or not merge with what is before me? And how do I give people the space they need to work through what they are going through? This is a deep level of social intelligence, and I think I inherited some of this from my father because honey really drips from his mouth, and he's an excellent deal maker and a really, really charming guy. And I think I learned some of it from high school sports and being around charismatic coaches and, jocular type of personalities, like really good-hearted, hardworking people with a good work ethic. They're jovial. They exchange quips and words. And so this kind of helped me arrive at the clubhouse knowing that I'm a rookie, I'm young, I'm lucky to be here. Just shut up and don't ask for anything. Like, I didn't ask for a signature. I asked for tickets because I had family in Canada that would come down, so I got extra tickets to games. I only had 4 tickets per game for the whole season, but I got some extra tickets from the players for family that one time. And I didn't ask to get baseballs signed till the end of the year when I got 44 signatures on 8 baseballs to get the World Series ball done. We waited till MLB sent these special balls with the World Series logo on them. And those are the only things I got signed for the entire season. And it was very good to not nag the players for anything. They respected that. So it was a very valuable lesson to learn about having antenna 30 feet out of your head. It's a deep level of intuitive reaching out and foraying. And always the key I learned later when I mastered NLP it's calibration. It's getting out of your sphere and getting into the sphere of the other and lovingly and caringly wonder where they are in relation to where you are. This depth of range and reach can save a lot of theater, a lot of drama, and a lot of miscommunication. And this is a practice that can be developed by things like breath work, meditation, yoga asana, strength training. Just really taking care of yourself and enhancing the function of your nervous system can help you reach beyond your own sphere and your own needs and wonder what those around you might be feeling and needing in the moment. Now, another fantastic lesson I learned is to just shut up and work hard when you're young. Now, this, I have to give credit to my father. He literally told me this. And I remember one time my dad built homes. He was a contractor. My father was a very educated man. But because he was an immigrant to the country, he had to work as a contractor. That was his path, which cleared the path for me to do other things, more interesting things in my life. And that's a very sacrificial, beautiful thing that a father can do because his genetic material can reach further out into the universe and explore the future deeper in a way with more variability than he could in his lifetime with his options. So I give my dad a lot of credit for this lesson because one day we were fixing a roof on a house. that he was hired to redo. And I was kind of lulling off on this experience and not focused. And my dad, we were on the roof. It's a scary thing to do. He slapped me pretty hard in the head and he said, "Stop daydreaming. You need to work the exact same way you would for $5 an hour as you would for $5,000 per hour. Your work is a reflection of who you are." Now, I didn't like his teaching technique. It was, not so desirable. But I never forgot the lesson. To this day, it's clear. To this day, I tell the same things to people who apprentice with me and wish to acquire my knowledge. Your work is a reflection of who you are. And so when I brought this attitude to the New York Yankees subconsciously, they respected my work ethic. I had matched their work ethic. The level of excellence through which I held myself without realizing it and not being lazy was resonant with how these players got to Major League Baseball, how they got to the best team in all of the big leagues, where they beat out 5,000 guys in their position to make the pros. They had to be totally driven and talented to get into pinstripes. To be a Yankee, you have to have that it factor, magic, work ethic, and the ability to merge with a team. Hard work is a currency among the pros. And this, because it was part of my DNA, it was hardwired into me to work hard. It was the only reason I got voted the World Series ring, in my opinion. I didn't know till the second season I was voted the ring. The Yankees locked themselves in the lounge and voted on who contributed to their winning season when we entered the playoffs. They did this just as the playoffs started, and they kept it a secret from me till the second year, when one of the guys from the office came down, a young fella, with these ring finger measurements tool, and he was measuring fingers. And I just went to my massage room and just chilled. And his turn finally came to me, and I was like, "What is this?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, you got a ring. I need to get your measurement." And I just zipped my lip and played it cool as if I knew. And I was like, holy cow. I'm getting a ring? I'm 25. I'll be 26 soon. This is crazy. I'm just happy to be here making a full-time salary and traveling with the New York Yankees. This is great for my resume. Holy cow, I get a ring with my name on it. This is something, it registered so deeply because as a fan of the game, I had seen many, many great players finish their careers and not get this ring. Hard-working people playing 16 years and not winning a championship. Guys that were in the Hall of Fame that didn't get a ring. And here I was, a massage therapist and assistant trainer, and I would get a ring at the age of 25. And not just any ring. It wasn't like a Texas Rangers ring, or a Diamondbacks ring. This was the Yankees ring, the team I idolized and knew their whole history of. So I had to restrain myself from being too excited. And when that front office guy left, I jumped so high in my massage room. I got so happy and elated, and I went out and I laughed really hard with Mariano Rivera, who was, it was really the pitching staff who rooted for me because they used my therapy. I worked on Mariano Rivera every single day for 2 hours from the first to the seventh inning. And then he would take a shower and get ready, and a golf cart would take him out to the clubhouse. And I worked on the starting pitcher 2 hours every day. And I worked on all the athletes, what's called spot work. Some guys would come in for a half hour. Some would come for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Oh, I strained a hamstring stealing third the other day. It's stiff. Can you work it out? I'd even them out. I'd work on asymmetries, send the guys back out. But the pitching staff really lived on my table because throwing a baseball is a very, very unnatural thing. And the arm would get inflamed when the elbow snapped. on the follow-through portion of the pitch. You can see this when Andy Pettitte throws really hard, how his elbow snaps out of place. It's kind of nasty, which is why guys end up getting that Tommy John surgery, which is common, and one arm becomes shorter than the other. But nonetheless, it was the pitchers who respected me and really pulled for me to get the ring, and they surprised me, and we all hugged and laughed at the beginning of the second year in 2001 to surprise me that I had the ring. So what got me that ring is that I never said no to the guys, even though I was hurting, my hands were inflamed. A therapist should not work on big, strong bodies every day, continuously without a rest. But I sacrificed my health knowing that on the off season, I would heal and I would reboot and this would be fine. And this is about winning, and you have to go above and beyond what is expected of you to rise to the top. And it did. Everybody played their part. We backpedaled into the playoffs, and we ended up winning the World Series in 5 games because we were a team. So work ethic goes a far way, and just shut up and work hard when you're young. The key lesson I tell young people is every step in your youth is worth 3 or 4 steps in your 40s and 50s. And what I mean by that is doors open when you're young. People look in your eyes, they sense your hunger, and they'll give you a break. A 40-year-old who hasn't done something amazing, or a 50-year-old who hasn't done something amazing, has to really work harder to discipline themselves. And they have less trust from an employer or someone who owns a business. Someone who's young and works hard can be shaped and apprenticed and taught properly, so there's not a hole in their approach to discipline. A few degrees of weakness when you're young become a huge gap when you're 40 and 50. And a few degrees of discipline and narrowing your path when you're young can create a huge resonance of excellence when you're 40 or 50. So when I see young people, I say, suck it up, pay your dues. I like when a young person is able to pay their dues by being hungry. Now, the last and final lesson, the peak lesson, and the reason I save this as the rasa, the juice of this talk, is I had a deep relationship with Mariano Rivera. Mariano Rivera was on my table every single day for 2 hours a day. So not only did I know his body, I started to know his framework and his mindset. And this is a incredible level of focus. I had never met someone except my father that had this type of capacity to focus. And he said a very strange phrase to me. The phraseology is interesting, and it stopped me in my tracks, and it made me ask him what he meant. And the final lesson I learned from the New York Yankees is this. Mo said, ice water in your veins. Ice water in the veins. I said, Mo, what do you mean, ice water in your veins? He said to me, I throw my best stuff. It gets smashed out of the park. The game is on the line, and now it's tied. There's 57,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs. He says, I don't hear the crowd. I have to clear my mind, turn around, and throw strikes. I have to place the ball where I want to place it. Now, I will say I met Mo at a time in his life when he was very focused, the most focused and the most disciplined. I don't know what he was like when he was young, but what I saw at that time was a guy who never got into trouble. He was never at the nightclub. He was really tuned in to his partnership with his wife. He was relatively religious, and he led a narrow path. He didn't allow himself to get involved in things that were unproductive, which is very tempting when one is at the doorstep of fame. Fame brings all kinds of opportunities, some of which are really distracting and can bring you down if they are unchecked. But he was living the narrow path all season, both years that I worked with the team. And that idea of ice water in the veins, it just made this beautiful circle for me to this moment that I am in 45, where on all of my YouTube videos and brand content videos and teacher training videos, my motto, my tag ended up being, we train to master our own mind. And I didn't connect that till today as I'm sitting in studio with the Yankee ring in my hand and all of these old newspapers from 2000 jogging my memory, that ice water in the veins had manifested 20 years later into we train to master our own mind. Like, it made a loop. It was an Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail. It was a gift from the universe, a perfect circle, a master teaching from a master of his craft to someone who ended up becoming a teacher. Mo said, ice water in the veins. You have to clear your head, get in the moment, and focus on what is next, what is right before you. What do you have to do? What action do you have to take in the now? And I ask you, as we look out into 2021, I have learned to walk alongside my fear. I have so much fear in the heart of disorder and chaos. And I've taken that fear in the last 8 months since we've been in lockdown, 9 months. And I've done all the practices to scrub it from my heart and put it right next to my right shoulder so I can look over at that pain and fear and allow it to inspire me and motivate me and make me the best teacher possible, and to help people become as stable as possible, to help people become firm and rooted as possible. Ice water in the veins is about sensing your fear of failure, sensing your fear of death, of annihilation, but acting nonetheless. This is the meaning of a spiritual warrior who walks the razor's edge. You're walking the spiritual path, and if you have your ego gets inflated even a little bit, you can slip to the left or right and fall right on your face. But what do you have to do? Get back up, be humble, and move in the direction of the Spirit, in the direction of unity, in the direction of helping fellow human beings improve their lives. So I appreciate this deep yogic teaching from Mariano Rivera. It reminds me of the 12th Yoga Sutra, which is Abhyasa Vairagya Bhyam Tan Nirodha. And what this means is, how do we still our mind? How do we come into focus? We come into focus by continuous practice and non-attachment. Vairagya is non-attachment. Mo, if his ego had gotten into a state of fear that his best pitch was hit way out of the park for a home run, and he had felt humiliated on national TV in front of 100 million people and in front of a live stadium with 57,186 people, if he had felt embarrassed about that, he would be unfocused in delivering a 96-mile-per-hour cutter that sawed off the next bat. Like, he couldn't do it if his mind was ruminating on the past. And I didn't know it because I wasn't immersed in a daily yoga practice at the time. But yoga is really about mind control and directing one's energy to the creative process. Mind control, banishing fear, looking at reality as it is, non-attachment, allowing your thoughts to come, seeing them, letting them fall, letting them go away, unattached, unfazed, unemotional, unaffected, so that you can choose clearly. Now, this guy, I was catching him at the best time in his life, and I learned if you want to master your craft, you start to walk a narrow path. And yoga has done just that for me. Yoga has sucked up a lot of things that were wide-ranging. I grew up as a passionate young man, a very sensuous young man, and yoga has trimmed away. It has actually taken away so much, and what I'm left with is Simplicity is purity. The simpler I get, the more pure I get, the more happy I am, the more in service I am to my fellow man and woman. So I'm happy about these lessons. I'm really, 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 really psyched that I had the opportunity to work with the greatest franchise in all of sports history. I had the childhood that prepared me for the job, and I was in the right place at the right time to create. I created this job by first taking an internship and then working home games and then being asked to work full-time and then being brought back for a second season. And it was an incredible thing to do at a young age, to associate with winners, the best ever, and to learn from the best ever. In closing, here are the 6 lessons I learned from the New York Yankees, just to iterate and put a nice cap on our experience here today. Number 1, keep it simple, stupid. Simplicity is purity. Practice minimalism. Buy the things you need. Don't clutter your life. Don't clutter your home. Keep things simple. You'll go further if your thoughts are organized and everything around you is structured, and you can reach for your tools that you need with your eyes closed because you know where they are. Number 2, daily practice. That's coming back each day to your process. Daily practice is the flame, the fire in which we're formed. Number 3, you got to have antenna 30 feet out of your head. If you want to be in the big leagues, you have to read energy. You have to know your edges. How does your energy merge with another's energy? When should you hold back? When should you move forward? You must develop your social intelligence, which is a skill that can be honed and practiced. Remember, words only equal 8 to 10% of our communication. The rest is posture, breathing, tonality, and things like eye contact. Number 4, shut up and work hard when you're young. You got to pay your dues. I really believe in this, and I help my apprentices more, and I share more knowledge when they are humble in my energy. Every step in your youth is worth 3 or 4 steps in your 40s and 50s. Remember that if you're listening to this and you're in your 20s. Number 5 is be hungry. Hunger can be seen in your eyes. Hunger opens doors. Hunger tells the master you are a good apprentice. Hunger helps you to evolve and adapt to the times. So stay hungry. Have a hungry look in your eye. And number 6 is the deepest of all teachings, which is have ice water in your veins. It's about self-control, poise, and looking at the future with optimism. It's not hankering in the past. It's looking at the past for lessons learned so that you can be your best today. It's about forgiving yourself and putting your best foot forward by having ice water in your veins. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to listen to these precious life lessons and for sharing the greatest adventure of my life. This is one of the fantastic tales in my illustrious career. It's allowed me to build successful contacts. If you can imagine a guy who worked with the New York Yankees and got a ring at 25 and 26, what other doors it's opened. I will be bringing some amazing, amazing guests into subsequent episodes that share tools and skills that you can model for excellence in training positive habits in your own life. Excellence can be modeled, it can be reproduced, and we are here to help one another. We are here to uplift one another. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you on the next show. Take care.